Hey, I'm Luther Kruger, Big Blue Sun Museum of Solar Cooking, based in Minneapolis. I'm here with Greg Lynch in, oh man, this is Emigrant, Montana. I keep thinking I visit a lot of people that have off-grid, off the beaten path, and I say, how can you possibly stand waking up to this every day? Gorgeous territory here, beautiful day, perfect for solar cooking, and talking about all the different solar cooking things that Greg has done. 3 different questions I always have, open-ended. First one is, how did you first find out about solar energy, any way, shape, or form, and how did that get to solar cooking?
Well, 32 years ago, I went to the Midwest Renewable Energy Fair in 1991. It was the second year that the fair had been held. And at that point, it was in Amherst, Wisconsin. And it was still kind of a small operation at that point. I think there might have been 2,000 or 3,000 people who showed up. And I went with a couple of friends from Minneapolis. And to be honest with you, my mindset had been being a more or less long-term prepper. I was into Edgar Cayce back in the late 60s. And he talked about these earth changes that he believed were coming. And I thought, when I first came across this, I was teaching school, and I just got kind of swept up in this idea, well, you know what, it's not a bad idea to have some things on hand in case there's an emergency. And so along with other reasons for going to the fair, I thought, well, there's going to be some things there that would certainly be good for just having on hand in case of an emergency. And this is the way our forebears lived without even thinking about it, because they could face a blizzard or something like that would cut off their supplies for potentially weeks. And they didn't have the kind of communications that we've got now. And so they had to be prepared. And I was kind of a fanatical estate sale shopper. Ended up with a whole lot of tools and things for building stuff. And so when I went to the energy fair, I encountered the original sun oven. Actually, it was the Global. It was the second sun oven. And I bought one of those. The price was only $1.25, I think, back then in 1991. And almost immediately became a dealer for them, and went back to Minneapolis and started cooking with the thing. And the thing that really turned me on was how good the food tasted. And there were a couple of classes that were given at the energy fair back then, one for building solar cookers and one for using solar cookers, by a couple of really nice ladies. One was from Home Power magazine, and I had contacted both of them and talked to them about Fireless cooking, or haybox cooking, by a number of different names, firehole cooking. And I said, you know, this is a good adjunct to solar cooking, and I think the people attending your classes would benefit from it. And so they both had me come in and do a little, I don't know what it was, 10-minute segment of their class on Fireless cooking, and it was a hit. And so this one lady, Julie, and she couldn't do her class anymore, she asked me if I could come and fill in and do her solar cooking, building a solar cooker class. And so I just added in my Fireless cooking with it. And I did it for 13 years there until I moved out here to Montana. Sure. Anyway, I did that for, like I say, 13 years, and taught a few thousand people. And it was regularly one of the best attended classes of the fair. Sure. And by the time I left in 2006, that was the last year I did a class, the fair was drawing over 20,000 people. Not lots of people, tried a lot of different cookers. I sold a solar chef besides the Sun Oven, and starting in 19...
Through where you got them from Sam Irwin?
I got them directly
okay.
from
Sure,
Sam.
Sure.
And that was starting in 1995.
Yeah.
And so got to meet just all kinds of people in the solar cooking realm. I guess over the years, I've got a philosophy too, because like I said, the thing that turned me on was how good the food tasted. And I've done firewood,
Sure.
cooking with an old wood stove, and which you'd think would do a pretty good job, and it does, but it's not the same. And I'm totally convinced, just based on what's happened over the years, that we've got a long way to go to know what's really in sunlight. And there's something about the sun's energy that changes food and allows it to come up in its flavor value.
And I see on the table you have Heaven's Flame, because that's one thing that Joe Radabaugh mentioned.
Yep.
He said someone told us this life force called the prana. I don't know if
Yes.
it's yeah. And the other the more, I don't know, you say the more secular side, he says, well, all the best chefs say the lower the temperature, the slower you can cook it for the longest time, the better it's going to turn out, because it gives time for the proteins to break down properly, not just get scorched.
Yeah.
Going right from protein to charcoal.
But I think there is something more than that, because I've done a variety of different types of slow cooking, including Fireless, but it does not do what solar does. Yeah. And I've experimented with different containers and different types of glass, all different kinds of cooking vessels. And my personal choice is ceramic. And it could be dark or light. Dark is, of course, going to be better if you're in a hurry.
Sure.
But I think that there's something about the ceramic that may allow this energy to work in some improved fashion. I don't have more of an explanation.
It's the original cooker material.
Yes.
I mean, before the Bronze Age, Iron Age, did we have a Copper Age? I don't know. They're all metal for a while. So going back to the original, that's going back to the original material that people cooked with.
Yep.
So, yeah. I do remember reading, I've got to find the citation about the light is hitting, some of the food, of course, is greens, where that at one time it was photosynthesizing.
Yes.
And maybe it's still photosynthesizing while it's in the pot. I mean, if it's fresh, it hasn't lost the capability of doing that. It's just lost the connection to the tree or the roots or whatever. So, yeah. Oh, cool. Well, so today, let's start with this. We've got a handful of cookers out here and a bunch of other stuff we're going to talk about. But this one certainly caught my eye right away. And it's shout out to Matt West in Temple, Texas, who he's like all of us when we get the bug. We look at something and we say, can we turn that into a solar cooker? Well, he does it for just about everything he sees. And I'm looking at this. I'm imagining, you probably saw this and said, oh, yeah, a parabolic curve. And right?
Yep.
Anyway, tell us the story behind this one.
Okay. I built a number of different cookers because when I first took over the classes there, the first year anyway, it was the build-it-yourself cooker class. And so I took several different models of home-built cookers so that people could see examples of things that they could do themselves. And the simplest one, which I don't have here right now, is what's called a box corner cooker, where you just take a cube-shaped box and cut half of it off, save one of the discard sides to make a reflector panel, and then put your dark pot in a Reynolds oven bag in the corner, and ideally lift it up. I put it on a number 10 can that's been painted black to have more absorption, to provide more heat into the pot.
Sure.
And that's one cooker that's common. Of course, the hay box, or not the hay box, but the sun box. Sure. There's just all kinds of them out there. But I thought, I was thinking about something parabolic, and I thought, well, why don't I try cutting a 55-gallon drum in half and line it with Mylar and put a shelf in it and a little reflector panel on the bottom and see what we end up with. And this is it. And like this one right now, it was up at 300 degrees. It's down a little bit now, but it's I haven't adjusted the bottom reflector panel. That would raise it back up again. That's usually what it tops out at. And this is with an empty pan, of course. But it'll get up around 300. Now, if someone wants to build something like this, ideally I would use a steel drum.
Sure.
This one tends to get warm, and the plastic starts to get.
It has a life of its own.
Yeah, it starts to walk around, you might say.
Yep.
And what I used for the bottom reflector panel is a piece of 1-inch double-sided polyurethane or polycyanurate insulation.
Sure.
The other side has the not so shiny. It's kind of a dull aluminum foil reflector, and I used the Mylar on this side, on the reflector side, because I wanted to have the maximum amount of reflectance.
Sure.
And so you just kind of aim it towards the sun and then look underneath to adjust this this reflector panel to get the maximum amount of sunlight hitting the bottom of the pan. And so you're at the same time you're also getting sun coming down from above and reflecting right to the pot.
Sure.
And I've cooked a lot of food in this thing, and it's not for baking, but for a pot.
Sure.
That you can put inside of a Reynolds oven bag. It works great.
Sure. But I can say I've been holding this to make sure we get fairly equidistant here with the microphone, and I'm just above where it starts to get very uncomfortably hot. I mean, so that's how effective this is.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's another really simple thing to build.
Sure.
Nothing complicated. Just takes a little time, and and if you do the plastic drum, what I did on the sides is reinforce the sides with a couple of furring strips, so that it won't warp, out of control and be unusable.
Sure.
And I have to brace the top of it because it will tend to kind of go like that. And this is 25 years old, so it's been around, and it's still got the original Mylar, believe it or not.
I'll believe it. Yeah.
The only thing I've had to do is replace the duct tape on it. And for duct tape, I use 3M all-weather tape.
Okay.
That's what I've found will outlast conventional duct tape probably 4, 5, 6 times.
Wow.
In terms of how long it'll last.
Yeah.
So pay a little extra for 3M all-weather duct tape.
Okay.
For what it's worth.
Sure.
So I don't know if you
have
any other questions about it.
This is pretty self-explanatory. You covered all the details, and the oven bag, and
to be honest with you, I did not do any experiments with the height of the shelf.
Sure.
To see if there would have been a more ideal
Right.
shelf. It's about the halfway point,
Sure.
or maybe just a little bit below the halfway point. And what I was thinking in terms of with that was maximizing the amount of reflectance from above the pot
Sure.
that's being, directed to the top of the pot. So.
And it is happening. It is happening. Oh yeah, there's a point where you just say, I don't think I'm going to go any further.
So
yeah.
This is the only plastic one that I have. So
Sure.
that's and I've showed this because it's one that I hadn't seen anybody else do in quite this configuration.
Sure. Let's do the chef. So if you want to go right there and just kind of lean on this for.
Well,
in the right direction.
I have to say, the chefs are my favorite babies, and I've been using them since '95, so almost 30 years, and I've used them in sub-zero temperatures in Minnesota. I remember I lived in Circle Pines before I moved out here, and I'd go out. I was literally out baking chicken at somewhere around zero, and it was not a nice day. It was, not a not a nice calm day, but got the job done, and so that's the thing that you always want to do if you can get out of the wind. That's kind of hard to do here.
Yeah, you got. Glad I have this because that's a killer for sound.
Yep. But these are wonderful, and I showed you the polycarbonate prototype that he came up with, but that Sam came up with, but he never went any further with it. I think he had 8 of these made up. He sent me one for this cooker and one for the little one.
Sure.
And said, play with these and see what you think.
Yeah.
And I loved them. I mean, it was when you're dealing with this glass, you're always kind of on pins and needles handling the thing. And especially if when I was going to the fair and places like that, or going out and doing demos or classes in Minnesota or elsewhere, I was always concerned about something falling on this or dropping.
How much bubble pack did you use?
Well, you just put it in a box and pray.
Yeah, pray. And put it in the back seat with a seat belt around it.
Anyway, this one, believe it or not, it's going on 30 years old.
Yeah.
And it's the glue has held up amazingly well. But I'll just throw it out there for anyone who's got one of these that if you do break it, what my idea is that I'll get somebody who's handy with welding and build just a heavy wire frame that's something like this, and it could just come out to a point with a handle on it, and then cover it with something like the Reynolds oven bag material. 3M probably has something that you could use that's resistant to, say, up to 400 degrees or 450. And that way you don't have to worry about breaking glass. On a lot of chickens in here, and a lot of fish, and pretty much everybody says this is the best I've ever tasted of whatever it is.
Sure.
It's just what the sun does.
Yeah.
It's just such an amazing gift.
This is about as almost brand new. You can see a little bit of aging, but still solid.
I've used it so much I just eyeball it.
Well, and then you got this too.
Yep.
I mean, and really, this is just a kind of a double check. Yeah. But it's beautiful, and just noting for the cameras, it's about 370, 375, 380 maybe even. About 375.
Yeah. And probably by midday it might be hitting 4.
Oh, I believe it. Yeah. Yeah, because you got another 20, 25 degrees at least.
Yeah.
Where it's going to get further overhead.
I was originally trying to make a water heater. I don't know.
Right, I remember reading about that, yeah.
And it wasn't working that well, and his wife says, why don't you try putting some food in there? So he put some food in there, and voila!
Wow.
He's in business. And he was in Mother Earth back in, it was either 76 or 78 with these.
Sure.
I don't know. I've got.
It's been around that long, yeah.
Yeah, I've got a couple of the copies of it buried somewhere.
Sure. But I would say that's a common thread. People think of the solar energy for one use, and then when they finally get a thermometer in there or a thermocoupler, and they're going, wow, 300, 350? Shoot.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, it's one of the crown jewels.
Yes,
A lot of people that start to build up a little inventory, this is a target. This is the one they want to get.
And there are some people who are quite interested. I sold sun ovens here. I wouldn't say a lot, but I did sell them. and some of the people were very happy with them, and other people, and I see them, I ask them, "Are you doing much solar cooking?" "No, just not getting to it." And I say, "Well, that's your loss." I've had some experience, or some occasions to cook for a number of people. I remember one time in Minnesota, I cooked for a group of about 75 people.
Oh, wow.
With I had a whole array of sun ovens, the solar chefs, and I don't remember what else, but I did salmon for this big group, and people came and said, "That's the best salmon I've ever had." And so I'd like to be able to do that to, if I could find a big enough group, and even the permaculture groups who I would think, there are some here, and there's a few in Montana, and there's a big group out in Missoula. I just figure they're missing something, and it's not everybody, because there are people out there who are into solar, and different types of solar, and I encourage them to, what I was saying about photovoltaics, to me, that's not going to be around too much longer, because there's technology that's so far beyond that once we get the oil companies off our backs, this stuff is going to come out like in a volcano, because there's so much. It's just a no-brainer. Temperature kills. I mean, it destroys. So.
Well, how about I'll move some cameras to get more of the sun oven. Switch sides so I can base myself on the other side, since I forgot to put my hat on. Okay, so the sun oven, this is like going back, way back.
The first sun ovens, I believe, came out in '85, and this was, what's his name?
Tom Burns?
Tom Burns.
Yep.
This was his original design, and it's the biggest and the heaviest, but it's got a very large cooking chamber, and as far as I'm concerned, it's the best one. It's heavier, it's kind of clumsy, but I just like it. I really like working with it, and I've got a global, and I've had the All-American. I sold all of those off that I had, but because I just don't need to have a huge collection of them. And this is the one that I'll come out and set up, sometimes in addition to a solar chef if I'm cooking more than one thing at a time for a meal.
Sure.
And it's a wonderful cooker.
I'm going to set this here because we'll get a shot of the cooker itself, especially with the legs there.
See that? It's just a little support.
Yeah. And it's just the kind of could double as a handle. Yeah.
And then in the back, it's got the port stand that's adjustable. There's a number of different little
sure.
places to.
So Ed had one that was more stable than later they had just the stick in the middle.
Just the stick.
Which everyone I know that has it says that's so much less stable in the wind than the very latest. They have the little crossbar thing, which helps a lot, and you put a little weight on it and so forth. But that already's got it covered. It's already more like a table than a three-legged stool.
With the wind that we've got here, I almost always stabilize it, sometimes with a couple of cement blocks or something like that if I'm using this one. Just because I don't want it to blow over and damage the panels.
And one could actually do that to a current model.
Yeah.
Just figure out a little bracket and swing arm thing like that, and then just well. Okay.
There is the advantage with this over the Global and the All-American of that thing in the front, the stand in the front to keep it from
because it's both directions
onto the panels.
Okay, well maybe we could sit around the table to talk about stuff you got there, because that's all pretty well self-contained and.
Well.
Yeah, where to start?
Okay. Like I said, I taught the Fireless cooking to the classes at the Midwest Renewable Energy Fair with two ladies doing solar cooking classes, and they thought it was a good adjunct to what they were doing, and and then I took over for one of them, and I don't remember what happened to the other lady, but she stopped giving her class, so then my class became building, using solar cookers, and then Fireless cookers. Anyway, I started doing Fireless cooking back in about the mid-70s, and the way I got started was I read about it. I think I saw it in Mother Earth News, and just using a thermos bottle to start with, and I tried that with a conventional thermos, and it was just ridiculous trying to get food out of a thermos with an opening like that. And I realized that's not the way to go. But I was living in a house with about 25 people in it in Minnesota, and we'd share meals, and I'd cook breakfast quite a bit, and I'd do up big pots of like rice or wheat or something like that, and flavored up with things to make it interesting, and people really enjoyed it. And I did it with a cast iron pot that I put inside of I think it was a box like this, and then just put insulation around it, like a blanket or something, and let it sit overnight, and it was just beautiful in the morning. And everybody loved it, and so I kind of kept going with that and experimenting over the years with different types of things to cook stuff in, and I ended up cooking that way for myself when I was working. I put stuff in a wide mouth thermos, and this was going, I think we're going back here over 30 years when I was doing this. And this particular bottle was a thermos, a Nissan thermos. And the Nissan company that you may have seen, Nissan thermoses.
I actually don't think I have,
like,
but yeah. Okay.
Like this says Thermos Nissan. Forget what this one says. No, this says Nissan. Nissan is not the car company, it's another Nissan company. They actually bought Thermos back in the 90s, and they had more advanced vacuum technology than any of the other thermos makers. This one here.
Oh my goodness.
This is a 5-quart, and this is a Fireless cooker with a vacuum container. It's a 5-quart pot. You bring this to a full boil on the stove with soup or stew or beans or something like that, and pop it into the container, close it up, and you're cooking. And you can take this on the road with you on a road trip or to a picnic or a party or something like that, and the food is cooking while you're going there, and when you've gotten to the event, you just open it up and serve people.
Wow.
And the food stays hot, and it's just a wonderful device. This one here.
Wow.
It's an 8-liter pot, and it also works great. It's and what Ernie, the man who was my friend at Thermos, told me was that they sell a lot of these in the Far East. And I said, why in the Far East? Fuel, the price of fuel. And people are, in many cases, cooking on a little stove that's fueled by maybe propane or butane or maybe wood, and they're just trying to save fuel. For something like, going on a trip, going to a party, going to a picnic, potluck, something like that, it's a pretty handy thing if you want to serve a few people. It's just a really neat device. And I cooked for years for myself in this thing. This has probably had many hundreds of meals cooked in it, and that is not an exaggeration. I just make up a very specific 3-cup pot of food, soup, stew, beans, things like that, and bring it to a boil, put it into the thermos, and close it up. And when I was ready for lunch, it was cooked. And so a wide mouth thermos like this does work. I would say you want to have something that's got at least 3 cups of volume. And also you want something with a thick stopper.
Yeah.
And this is about a 2-inch stopper here. I'll give you an example of one that does not work, and that's this.
It's too, yeah.
It's
going to lose too much heat.
It's going to lose too much heat, and it doesn't have enough initial thermal mass to get the job done.
Yeah.
So do not try to use this other than for, say, oatmeal or something like that. That doesn't really have to cook because the oatmeal's already cooked. You're just basically rehydrating it with hot water.
Yeah.
And so this will work for oatmeal and maybe some other pre-cooked things, but not for cooking from scratch. I'll just show you another commercially made unit. This is a Japanese unit. It's called the Teyama, and it's less expensive because it's not vacuum insulated.
Okay.
It's insulated with probably polycyanurate or one of the foam insulations, but it's a nice unit, and it does the job. It's big. I think it's 7 liters. It's a pretty hefty unit, so you wouldn't necessarily use this unless you're going to have it at least half full or more, because most of these things you want to have a kind of a minimum thermal mass, and you'll kind of find out from experience the minimum that you can get away with. And so here in Montana, where the boiling point is about, or at a mile elevation like we are right now, the boiling point you're starting out with is about 203, 204, 204 degrees Fahrenheit.
Sure.
You've got about a 10-degree deficit that you're starting out with, because the fireless cooking cuts out at about 180 degrees. When the temperature drops below that, the cooking pretty much stops. So you have to maintain that 180 degree temperature until the food is cooked. And then if you're not going to use the food that's left after you've served everybody, you do want to get it cooled fairly soon, unless you're going to have another meal right away and use up the rest of it. But that's one of the precautions that you want to keep in mind for fireless cooking, is not to let the stuff sit around, because if you haven't boiled it for some, kind of hard to say, maybe 10-15 minutes, you may not have taken care of all the bacterial load that's in the food prior to cooking. One of the things I like to show people is this is not a new technology. This is a 115-year-old cookbook. Mrs. Household Discoveries and Mrs. Curtis's cookbook has a whole chapter on fireless cooking and how to do it. And this is from 1908. Yeah. So this is not new stuff. The Hawaiians did it when I was in Hawaii a couple times, and went to a luau one time, and all the food came out of a hole in the ground where it had been for 2 days, cooking on hot rocks. That's fireless cooking. Yep. And it's been done for a long, long time. A quick review. The definition that I would give in my class is fireless cooking is cooking food with retained heat in an insulated container by maintaining a temperature in excess of 180 degrees for as long as is needed to thoroughly cook the food. Yep. So that's the kind of basic definition. It's slow, thorough, no burning, no overcooking. It's overnight or all day cooking, such as what we do with a crock pot. But with this, you don't have to plug it in, and you can use it for going to a party, picnics, potlucks, road trips. There's less evaporation. It's probably a 70 to 90% fuel or electricity saving, because you just bring it to a boil, and that's all the fuel that you need. I'll show you another couple of cookers, types
Sure.
of cookers. This is the first one. Now this is going back almost 30 years. This styrofoam box was a discard, and just found it at a dump site. It's a box that fishermen would get for bringing fish back from, say, Alaska or someplace like that, and traveling by car or whatever. And it's got a big lid. There's plenty of room in it.
Okay.
So what I did was added another layer of whatever it is, 1.25 styrofoam on top of, in addition to the lid for the box. And then I put 2 more containers inside of it to create just a super efficient cooker. And one of these I used 2-inch polycyanurate, and the other one is another styrofoam box for shipping or whatever that was kind of a rectangular shape. And I used more insulation on the inside of this to turn it into a square so that I could put a round pot into it. And I put aluminum foil on the inside on all of the surfaces. And I've got a trivet on the bottom, so it lifts the pot off the bottom. It's just a little trivet that could be anything.
Sure.
But this way you get the reflectance action of the aluminum foil, reflecting the radiant heat back to the pot. And so with this is a cast iron pot, which may or may not be what you'd use, but it works pretty well. I've never had this thing fail because of how well insulated it is. And just close it up and put the additional pieces on it. And we're in business.
Oh yeah. And probably 10, 15 people worth of food in there.
Pretty much.
Cooking.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, if you use the right size pots.
Yeah. Well, and this speaks to, the big push to eliminate as much use of plastics as possible. To first start as single-use plastics. That's the biggest waste. But then stuff like this, to be able to repurpose this for something good.
Yep.
To save, to negate the need for more plastic for cooking utensils and so forth when you're cooking with this. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. So here's another example of this, that just a different size pot, and it's not as efficient as the one I've just shown, but it does work, and it's just a very simple shipping container that you could use. I do recommend putting a trivet on the bottom, and you can add aluminum foil to the inside if you want to for reflectance. But with this particular one, what I wanted to demonstrate was just using an old poly blanket and just wrap it around the pot. So it's completely encircled. You can see here.
Yep.
And just fold it over. close it up,
You're done.
we're in business. So that's just another very simple way to do this kind of cooking. And one of the advantages that I would pass along to people is if you've got a container for your solar cooking that will match a fireless cooker like this, if you lose your sunlight in the middle of cooking but you've reached a cooking temperature, just pop your pot into the fireless cooker and finish the job. Because probably won't taste quite as good as if it was finished with a solar cooker, but you're going to get the job done, and that is all that's going to matter to a hungry family. Anyway, another consideration that people may have is, well, do I want a cast iron pot, or do I want just an enamel coated steel pot? And now, depending on the efficiency of your fireless cooker, if it's fairly efficient, you really don't have to worry about having the additional thermal mass of the cast iron.
Right.
The cast iron is going to absorb a certain amount of extra heat that requires more fuel. So if you want to go the cheap route, just use an enamel coated steel pot like this. It's lightweight, takes less energy to heat up, and you get your food to a boil faster, and you don't use as much fuel. And this, if it's pretty much full, you've got enough thermal mass here to get the job done. Before I forget it, if you cook grain in the thermos, leave at least a ½ inch or so of space at the top, especially with wheat, spelt, kamut, rye, because it's going to expand, and you don't want it causing problems with your thermos.
Yeah.
Just leave it maybe a ½ or 3/4 of an inch of airspace at the top of the thermos. Don't fill it all the way to the top, and you should be safe.
Sure.
So
Great.
that's it.
This is great. So that was the middle question. The last question is, I always have to ask because I never know the response. Sometimes I know because people are already doing it, but where do you see the future of solar cooking, solar thermal, thermal cooking, hay basket, any of this, and how to promote it? I mean, the future should involve some kind of promotion. What kind of secret sauce have you heard of that really works?
Personally, I think that the secret sauce for a lot of people is flavor. It's not for everybody, because some people just don't care, but there's more gourmet cooks out there than there were 50 years ago,
Yeah.
or 30 some years ago when I got started with this. And they're always looking for something that's going to do a better job of creating a tasty meal. And so I think that's kind of that's the secret sauce for a whole lot of people.
Yeah.
For some people, it would be the preparedness angle. And I think a lot of those people have probably been reached at this point. Some parts of the world, it's the efficiency and the saving of fuel. And I mentioned when I talked to you before about bringing up a metaphysical issue. I think that there's more to sunlight than we yet know. And it's just a no-brainer that as time goes on, we discover more about the whole universe. And we're finding out new things about the sun. The energy coming out of the sun has changed noticeably in the last 20 to 40 years. There's more intense white light than we had just 2 or 3 decades ago.
Generation ago.
Yeah.
Or two.
And sun used to be more yellow, and now it's a more intense white. What that's all about, I don't know, but the sun goes through its cycles.
Well, we covered a lot of ground here. This is fantastic. I really appreciate it.